is a Bramble Jam podcast.
Welcome to Girls Gone Hallmark, a Hallmark review podcast. I'm Megan, and I'm a longtime Hallmark fan.
I'm Wendy. I'm a former Hallmark hater.
Today, we're discussing The Way Home, Season 3, Episode 8, Smoke on the Water. And when you're not listening to this podcast, follow us on Instagram, where we are Girls Gone Hallmark.
We have a booming Facebook group, too, if you're looking for a group of like-minded Hallmark viewers. We talk a lot about The Way Home in there. We also talk a lot about breaking news as well as new Hallmark releases. So come give us a join. Girls Gone Hallmark on Facebook.
We love to hear your theories and your questions regarding this series, your ideas. Email us girlsgonehallmark@gmail.com, and we will use those in next week's listener mailbag episode.
One of the best episodes to record.
They're so fun.
I love it. I love all the theories, all the comments, all the crazy questions. Please send them our way.
Yeah, it's deep into my viewing experience for sure.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
It's like our own personal Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
Before we jump into The Way Home, wanted to address, there was some breaking news regarding one of the cast members of Signed, Sealed, Delivered. We're not getting into it here today, but we will be discussing it during next week's review. This week's recap, we're going back to chronological because we think that works best.
Don't
with
you?
The way this episode, yes. We try and synthesize these episodes as best we can, and some of them I think it makes sense to like wrap up each individual little plot point that we're dealing with. And this one, I think it all kind of builds on each other. And so we'll do it chronologically.
All right.
I think before I keep pushing off the recap, but I wanted to point out that if you are skipping the previously on, sometimes you're missing out on clues on what you're going to see in the episode. And I wanted to point out a few things that we see in this week's previously on.
Please.
Of course, we get, stuff that happened last week. Fine. But we also get Kat saying all signs point to Dad knowing about the pond. She's talking to Del. That was not from last week. We get a flashback of Nick's fishhook bracelet that he gave to Alice, saying, "You hooked me." And if you'll recall, a commenter pointed out some similarities between Nick's fishhook and Del and Colton's fish on the guitar moment.
Mm-hmm.
We also get a flashback to Jacob talking about the potatoes in Rye in 1814. Now, that is from last episode, but the thing they did that they didn't do in last episode is they also show the sketch of Jacob and the other young person. They're putting it together for you right there.
Yeah.
And now let's get into the episode.
Okay. We start off the top of the episode. Jacob and Alice are both looking for Kat. They end up on Elliot's doorstep. And Alice has big news to tell everybody that Casey is a time traveler. And Jake has big news. Jake. I just call him Jake. I'm like Kat. Kat calls him Jake, right? Anyway, Jacob is telling everybody that Colton was also a time traveler. Like, everybody has big news about time traveling. And then up walks Nick, overhears everything. He's like, "Is everyone a time traveler except for us?" And then like Elliot gives him like the side eye, like, "Well, I am too," So now Nick has learned that Elliot has also time traveled.
We get a flashback to the 1800s of Elijah and Jacob and Susanna sitting outside of the farm. Jacob is carving a boat, and he says, "Oh, it's a surprise for Jacob Jr., who I think is Elijah's son's child." Is that who Jacob Jr. is?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to need to email us. I remember a Jacob Jr. from like early season 2.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there was a child running around.
Yeah, I will admit, though, when he said that in this episode, I was like, is Susanna pregnant? What's happening here? But, that's not the case, I don't think.
Into this scene walks wet Colton looking around, and Susanna and Jacob kind of look at him, and Colton is very confused. He asks where he is. and Elijah is just the loveliest. Like, he's not at all shocked, in my opinion, to see this wet man walk up to his farm.
No, which is very telling.
I think so too. And he says, "You're at Landry Farm." Elijah introduces himself. He introduces Jacob and Susanna, and they take Colton into the house, and Colton looks shook. They give Colton one of Susanna's famous herbal teas. And Susanna is handing Elijah the Port Haven Almanac, and Colton looks at it and he's like, 1814. In the next scene, we see Susanna sketching that famous sketch of who we now know to be Jacob and Colton. And Jacob's talking about his future with Susanna, and he asks Colton about his plans. And Colton's like, "The time I spent here is equal to the time I'm gone." And Jacob's like, "What are you talking about, man?" And he's like, "Oh, it's just something my grandmother says." So we got Fern wisdom right there. And Colton wants to impart upon Jacob that, like, they've done something really impressive here. But he's like, "Listen to me. Plant potatoes and rye, not wheat and corn. Trust me. Stick with this for a couple of years." And Jacob's like, "Why do I feel like we've met before?" And Colton says, "Because we're cut from the same cloth."
Man, the chills I got when he said that, I was like, that's a great line.
Yeah, because Colton doesn't know who he's talking to. Mm-hmm. I mean, neither does Jacob, but the only one of them who had the chance to potentially have any guesses about who it could be would be Jacob, since they've actually met before.
You bring up a good point. Colton doesn't know who Jacob is at this point.
No.
In my mind, while I was watching it, I was thinking Colton does know who Jacob is. And that's why he's like, we're cut from the same cloth. But you're right. He doesn't know who he is. He just knows that they're Landrys and he's part of the Landry family. So they are cut from the same cloth in that sense.
Yeah, the questions I have here are, what led him to want to impart this information? Did Fern tell him? Did he read something in the future almanac about them surviving on potatoes and rye? So he knows someone needs to tell them that. Does he just realize, I don't know. How did this come to be? Because 17-year-old Colton needed some additional input in order to be able to be that helpful.
Yes, great insight. Because I wish they had some more context there of how does Colton know about the struggles of the Landrys in the 1800s. Present day, we have Dell sitting on the porch and she sees a memory of young Colton. And the memory is between young Colton and young Dell, and they are at the Landry farm. And she's like basically giving him a hard time. Like, why didn't you tell me about your grandmother and her time traveling stories? And, you know, it was all in good fun.
Yeah.
And Alice walks up and asks if Dell is okay. And I will admit, Dell seems a little despondent. Is that a word?
Oh, yeah. Dell is struggling,
right? And Dell basically tells Alice, like, she can't believe that Colton had this big secret this whole time. Like, she's just so torn up that he was a time traveler and kept this secret from her for as long as they were together.
Yeah, and the implications on what that means for Jacob's disappearance, that he had this
Correct.
information that he never let her in on.
Yes, which comes out like a little bit later in the episode.
Back in 1816, Kat arrives and she's basically like, maybe I am running away from my problems, but like, why are you still here? And he was like, I was holding on to hope. In this moment, they kiss. Like, to me, the kiss was like, this is just something that they do. There was no hesitation. It was like the kiss of people in a relationship. Thomas is like, why are you here? And she was like, can't I just be here because I want to run away from my problems and get back at Elliot? And Thomas says, is that all this is? And she says, no, but she does have a lot to work out. And Thomas is just kind of being strung along. And this is where Thomas tells her he will not wait forever. But I think we know that he just might.
You know what is so funny? This is would be a text between two people.
Oh, yeah.
2025. And she's like, well, gotta jump back in the pond to 18, 19 or whatever so I can let my dude know.
Well, this is so funny because this comment about him saying he won't wait forever is like the email we got about Thomas kind of being a sad sack who's just stalking the banks of the pond waiting for Kat to return all the time. looked at Thomas in a different way in this scene.
Really?
Yeah, I still am a huge Thomas fan. I still want to see how this relationship plays out. But this scene really showed how little power he has in their relationship.
Good point. So we're back in present day, and there are like 3 things that happen here in present day that I think help like move our story forward a little bit. So the first one, not so much, but Nick is asking Elliot and Jacob about time traveling and how many time travelers are out there. And in my opinion, he's probing too hard for answers about the pond.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me a little bit ragey. I think it's just because I don't really like Nick, but
I still don't fully understand his purpose here. And I think that's part of my issue is that until I understand what we're doing, and I have some suspicions about why he's here, but it's just a lot of Nick kind of getting in the way at the moment.
Totally. I agree. In this moment, Kat is like in the distance. Is she just like cruising by Elliot's house on her way home?
From the pond, yeah.
Yeah. And Nick is wondering, like, did she just come from the pond and where did she go? And he's asking Elliot and Jacob this. In this moment, Elliot sees Nick's fish hook keychain bracelet thing. And just like, it's a pause. Like, he's like,
that's interesting.
Why do you still have that from being 17 years old?
Yes.
In the next scene, we have Kat and Alice, and they're in the bedroom, and they're talking about like all the stuff that's been going on. Kat's like, well, I'm sure missed a lot. Yeah, that's what happens when you run away to the 1800s, Kat. But she's asking about the new theories about Colton time traveling and Casey time traveling. And it is kind of weird because we end last episode with a big revelation that Casey could potentially be a time traveler, and Alice witnesses it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very like passing sort of like conversation that Alice is having with Kat about it.
Yes, the fact that they're not like, Mom, Casey jumped in the pond and did it. Like, it should be like, but yeah.
Totally.
It's just par for the course these days.
I guess so. In this conversation, Kat tells Alice that she wants to confront Colton about time traveling. And Alice is like, yo, we can't tell him about his future.
Mm-hmm. Alice is the adult here.
She is the voice of reason, right? Kat is unhinged, I think, a little bit. I don't know what's happening with Kat. To me, she's operating unhinged.
Well, I just think she's not in a place to let things unfold in their own time, and she's trying to force them along, particularly the answers she wants about her dad, and Alice reels her back in.
Well, but then she goes, I don't have the exact words here, but she puts it all on Alice. Like, she's like, you need Colton to confide in you. Like, don't make your 17-year-old, don't put her in a position where she's got to now tell her grandfather, or get him to tell his truths. I don't like any of it. In this moment, Alice gets a text from Noah, and to me is low-key freaking out because she's like, all signs are pointing to my future with Max Goodman, and she doesn't know. Did I say Goodman? Goodwin. Yeah. She doesn't know how to move forward with Noah, knowing or speculating that it's not going to work out. So she's like, why bother? It's almost like dating someone and knowing like, well, I'm not going to marry this person, so why should I continue dating them? You're 17.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I also think it's a great example for Kat, who's sitting right there, of why people shouldn't know their future. Like, this is why we can't mess with Colton and tell him about things that are going to happen, because knowing your future or thinking you know your future affects how you behave in your present timeline.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. Kat consoles her. We'll figure it out. I was like, don't let Kat try to figure it out for you, babe. She gonna F it all up. Cut to next day, Noah comes to see Alice with flowers for their anniversary, and boom, she breaks it off with him. I was like, poor Noah. Doesn't stand a chance. Also, I wrote in my notes, WTF is going on with Noah's hair? Straight dad looks.
I know he had like kind of like looser, wavier, cooler hair last season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening. Now, here for the big exciting part.
Yes.
Kat's at work. I mean, and that's probably not the most exciting part in the scene, but Kat is back at the Herald. She's looking at a photo of Casey and she's like, you better be from the distant future because I'm not ready to be a grandma.
Great line.
Yeah, great line. And then she's going through these files. She's like, what did you want me to see, Casey? And she sees a signature of Casey's signature, and it is signed the letters K and C, Goodwin, which you mentioned like a couple episodes ago, Megan.
It wasn't my theory. It was a listener theory. But yes, I was thrilled to see that come to fruition. Definite was like fist pumping that moment.
Okay, so what are your theories here? What does KC stand for?
I forget what they thought it stood for. Catherine Coyle.
Oh, interesting. Oh my God.
But I know, but we don't know. But it's clues. It's clues. Back in 1874, Alice arrives at the point, and Evelyn's kind of like comforting Colton, but she's also minimizing his relationship with Dell. She's like, you'll get over this fling. And Jasper is telling him that he needs to channel his emotions into a song. And Evelyn smushes Colton's heart a little bit more, saying, girls like Delilah don't end up with farmers. And she's trying to distract him with a little bit of fun. She's like, let's go for one last summer swim at the Cove. Like, let's get your attention back on me, Colton. And Evelyn says to Alice, like, it's my time. Like, I'm going to get Colton's heart. And Alice is like, yeah, maybe not, bestie. And Alice approaches Colton, who's playing his guitar on the Landry porch. In the next scene, she begs off going to the point as well. Poor Evelyn. And Colton has like, I've been wanting to talk to you about something. I know you're like me. And Alice is like, is this it? And he's like, a musician. So he starts to play a song that he wants her opinion on. And the song is about a secret path to the past. And Alice is definitely asking some probing questions here. Perhaps trying to get him to admit that he's a time traveler. And for a second, Colton like kind of gets scared off. But then she asks to hear more of the song, where we cut back to present day.
So we're back in present day, and Kat is checking on Dell, and Dell asks Kat if she thinks Colton knew that maybe Jacob went into the pond, and she just feels sick about it, thinking that Colton watched her mourn I was going to say all those years, but it wasn't years, all those months after Jacob's disappearance, like knowing this secret. And Dell says, basically, like, you don't keep secrets from someone you really love. Oh man, my heart hurting for Dell here.
Yeah, I really was feeling for Dell throughout this entire episode. We go back to 1974, and Colton and Alice are singing his song together. I love it when Alice sings so much.
Oh, they're so good together. Yeah.
I think the absolute star of this show is Sadie LaFlamme Snow. I'm calling it right now. Like, Andie MacDowell, of course, there's some great acting in this, but I love Sadie so much. And in this episode, she does a lot. One of the lyrics of the song is "Let the water bring me back to you." And Alice is trying to get more information about Colton. She's like, I thought Dell hated the water. And Colton has this like grand theory about how he was like, I envisioned myself like sailing down the coast to get to her. We could be together.
Am I supposed to read into that at all?
I asked the same question and I have no answers. And so I'm just letting it wash over me.
Okay. We're back in present day, and Alice gets home. Max is there. Alice is wet, head to toe from the pond.
Yeah.
And he's like, I never expect you as a cold plunger. You don't jump in cold plunging in your clothes like that. It's so funny that it's just like a
throwaway.
They don't even, wouldn't he be like, is it raining? Like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. They talk. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong thing. He's there to talk about like their school test or whatever. And he mentions the chess set that is sitting right there. And he goes on to talk about how his grandma has taught him all the best moves and how to play chess, and he challenges her to a match. And if he wins, I don't know what happens if he wins, but if she wins, she'll get a new lab partner.
It's giving enemies to lovers.
It absolutely is. Abso-freaking-lutely.
But we also don't get any resolution on that chess game.
Nothing. No, right? You're right. Is that where they leave off in present day? Like we never return back to that moment. Right. The next part I have simply in my notes, dead and dusted. Kat basically confesses to Elliot that she kissed Tom. And she's trying to be honest with him. And Elliot accuses her of evening the score, which I was like, ouch. Like this whole scene between them, I was like, yikes, this hurts. They talk about their mistakes and not wanting to fight. But Kat is like, it's broken. And I wish we didn't have to try so hard to make it work. And he's like, well, that's the answer. Peace.
Yep.
Sorry, guys. I think this is the end of the road for Elliot
Forever?
and Kat. Never say never. Finally, we have Kat and Alice, and they're in bed, and they're talking about how their relationships are over and how they've both ended in one day. And Kat's like, I'm not ready to face the day, and Alice isn't either. But they're not ready to face the day in present day.
Yeah, they're both ready to travel back in time, and Kat heads to 1816, where it has just been 2 days that she's been back in the present, but turns out it's been 3 months, and Thomas is a big ol' liar because he said he would not wait around, but here he is. He stayed in Port Haven because things are not good. The cold weather lasted well into the summer. People are turning on Cyrus, the townspeople, as he lives in his tower on the hill. And Kat reads this that she needs to go to Susanna. And as they're making their plot to go rescue Susanna from where Cyrus is hiding her and where the townspeople are coming to get her, the camera pulls back to a man in a top hat watching from the hill. And he turns and we see his face in what seems like it should be a big reveal. Do you think this is Jasper?
I absolutely think it's Jasper.
I'm going to go with that. I screamed, who's that? I looked at the screen 2 or 3 times. I believe I need to see his his luscious locks, but is Jasper a time traveler? It seems like he is.
Well, I think Jasper in 74, I think that's a wig he's wearing, for that long hair. Only because I've looked this actor up and he has short hair in real life.
Yeah. Well, and that's definitely a 70s hairstyle. So
yes. Yeah. But I think it's Jasper. Like, it's so hard because in the 74 scenes, Jasper is like this background character that you don't pay a lot of attention to, right? So now to see like this person turn around and be like, well, I think that's him. I'm sure you'll send your emails. Let us know if you
please do
if you think if it's Jasper or someone else. Real quickly, we're back in 74 and Colton is excited about cutting a demo and he wants Alice to sing on it.
And back in present day, Jacob and Elliot are talking on Elliot's porch and Elliot's like, you can stick around here as long as you want. They're both struggling with Kat. Elliot is like, things are really messed up. And Jacob's like, you want to talk messed up? She killed our dad. But Elliot can't really help but defend Kat. And Jacob's like, I understand, but it is easier to be mad at a person than at a pond. Elliot is clearly still Team Kat, and he just reminds Jacob that she'll never forgive herself and she doesn't really need anyone else holding it against her. Dell's down at the pond and Jacob finds her there. And what I noticed is Jacob is in his 1800s garb. And in my mind, for a brief second, I was like, is that how he's dressing in the present day? But no, I get there. Dell notices what he's wearing too. And she realizes that not only are Kat and Alice both off time traveling, but Jacob is going to jump too. And Jacob apparently has come around very quickly thanks to Elliot because he says, Kat fought so hard to bring me back. It's my turn. And he jumps and Dell says to the pond, you won't stop until you've taken everyone I love. Now this scene got my spidey senses tingling because Nick from the woods saw Jacob jump and says that was pretty cool because, Nick's got a hard on for time travel and asks Dell if she's ever going to take the plunge. And Dell breaks my heart a second time by saying, I'll always be the one left behind. But Nick tries to be comforting to Dell and says, don't worry, I'll keep your secrets. And he He says, even if I were to tell my fiance Claire, she's such a no-nonsense broad like Dell, she wouldn't buy it. She'd think he was nuts. And when he says she's a no-nonsense woman, compares her to Dell, my mind immediately shoots to your hypothesis that Claire is, in fact, Susanna.
Oh, we will wait and see. There are a couple things in this scene that bothered me. One, this didn't bother me, but I was like, I felt really bad for Dell, like how isolating your children and like everybody, your grandchildren are like using the pond, and she is just like so upset, right? But then we have Nick, who openly admits he knows about the pond. And if you remember way back to episode 1 where Dell is at the kitchen table and she's like, this is the circle of trust. It stays here. Nobody outside of the circle knows about it. She doesn't even react to Nick talking about time travel and the pond. I'm like, what is happening here?
Yeah, that's a good point. Perhaps there are so many secrets that this is just one that she can't be bothered to care that much about.
Maybe, perhaps. But I'm excited to see who the heck Claire is.
Me too.
It's going to be Susanna. I think it is. Back in 1816, people are trying to get into Lingermore. Susanna's basically like, come and get it. And Kat comes in from like the tunnels or whatever. And I got to tell you, here's my commentary. I'm really tired of Kat trying to save the freaking day here. It just frustrates me.
Because it always causes more problems.
I know. She cannot figure it out. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
Susanna asks, like, how the hell did you get here? And Kat tells her it's the tunnels. And she's like, but look, you know what? Cyrus has been using those tunnels to get food and whatever in and out of Lingermore. And if you're here, he knows you're here too. And then some dude comes in and summons them to go see Cyrus.
Cut to 1974, where Alice and Colton are recording their demo at the Point, which is not what it's called in 1974. Is it called Coils? And Jasper has turned it into a recording studio by hanging rugs and blankets over the walls for the acoustics. Jasper's recording and he's vibing and he's like, we still got more tape. Do you have anything else? And Colton does just have one more song. And he starts playing a song that Alice has heard before. And we see flashbacks to some of my favorite scenes, which are Alice and Colton in 1999 playing music together. Lots of sweet, lovely 1999 family flashbacks. And I have to say, in this moment, Sadie LaFlamme Snow gives great emotional face. Speaking of emotion, Evelyn walks in and she listens at the door and I'm like, yo, it's a recording studio. You can't just let the outside noise in. But she overhears Colton saying, like, I know we recorded that, but I don't want that song on the record. That's just for Dell. And he's like, I know we're young and it seems crazy, but it's the real deal. And Evelyn's heart breaks in real time in this moment. Alice is also quite emotional about this declaration.
Yeah, my notes say 1916. What year are they in? I don't know, the 1800s. Kat and Susanna are in front of Cyrus, and he is asking about the My Catherine painting that is dated in 1814. And he's like, see, I know you've known her longer. He's all riled up, right? He goes to burn the painting, and Susanna's like, please don't. He says, I can see in your eyes the love you will not and cannot muster for me. And he feels like he's been played like a fool. And people are outside are like very angry. They're like are they trying to get at Susanna?
Well, they're trying to get at Cyrus. Like, he's living large while they're out there starving to death.
Okay.
And by extension, Susanna, yes.
Okay. So he's in this moment, he's like blaming Kat and he's yelling at Susanna for their deal being off. I write, what deal?
Me too, literally.
So thankful for Kat here. She says, what deal are you talking about? And Susanna basically just says that Cyrus agreed to protect Susanna's chosen family, which are the Landrys. And so in this moment, Kat realized she needs to go help Elijah. I'm dying here because I wrote Tom doing his best Bart Simpson in the bushes again.
It's Homer, but yes, 100%.
Oh, yes, it's Homer. You're right. But again, he's in the bushes listening. And Cyrus shows the painting of the witch to the people. You know, it's the My Catherine. And he's really like rallying them he's like, the witch and the Landrys have been successful in this terrible winter, and Elijah has made a deal with the devil for his soil.
It's giving Gaston in Beauty and the Beast in the Kill the Beast scene where the townspeople with their literal pitchforks are rallying.
Yeah.
Back in present day, Nick is packing up to leave, and Elliot clocks the fishhook once again and asks Nick if he perhaps has another reason why he's back in Port Haven, because Elliot thinks Nick is harboring feelings for teenage Alice, is my understanding of Elliot's motivation here.
Agree.
And Nick's like, you're on to me. But he's like, I just need to know more about time travel. He says the reason he still has the hook is because his mom's found it. So to the writer inner who wondered about no mention of Nick's mom's, here we have a little bit of one. And he wanted to return it to Alice. And Elliot's like, look, the pond sounds cool, but it's kind of a lot of trouble. Move here for you and Claire, but not for the pond. Like, do it for the right reasons. And Nick offers his own advice. He's like, get off the couch and go get your girl. But Nick's advice is always pretty bad.
Yeah, don't listen to Nick.
Nope.
No. Back in 74, Alice is headed down to the pond where she finds Evelyn face down in the water, freaks out. Evelyn is basically like floating there. Mm-hmm. She says, I'm channeling my Lady of Shalott and she will die a shadow person without love, etc. And Alice is like, snap out of it. And Evie is like, you don't care about me. Why are you encouraging Colton to get with Dell? Evie doesn't understand. And Alice straight tells her, like, you and Colton aren't ever going to be, so.
Yeah, you're never going to be Jello. It's Evelyn
harsh,
needed some tough love, I think, though. It is harsh, but Evelyn also is not reading the signs here. Like,
yeah, but you're 17 years old. Like,
I know. I mean, I felt for everybody in this situation. Alice was in a terrible position. Alice knows that Dell and Colton are going to end up together, and she knows they're supposed to end up together. And Evelyn isn't the girl for Colton, but I feel for Evelyn here. But also, I'm like, she does need to snap out of it. She is being dramatic. And Alice, although I did think Alice's line when she was like, it's not romantic, it's just sad. I was like, oh, poor Evelyn.
Yeah, that's rough. Super rough.
Back in present day, Nick runs into Alice and he returns the fishhook bracelet. And she does say, like, for all the bad the pond has brought, she wishes she could just go back to 1999. I kind of do miss those times. Mm-hmm. Nick tells her she's going to be just fine. Again, Nick doesn't have a clue and also gives terrible advice. Alice is not 100% sure based on what she's seen or thinks she's seen about her own future. Nick says, you Landry ladies are way too strong to let that pond rule your life. And in this moment, maybe Nick did give good advice because Alice seems like maybe she's going to give Noah a call.
Yeah. Back in the 1800s, Kat has gotten back to Elijah and she's like, look, dude, the people are coming and we need to go. And Jacob comes in. He busts in from the pond. Not wet, by the way. At least I don't remember him being wet. Elijah wants a reason why they need to leave. And Kat's like, the people are coming. Like, Cyrus has like riled them up. They're coming for you. Like, we got to go now.
Back in present day, Elliot finds Dell sitting in her truck and she's just struggling with everything that Colton never told her. And Elliot says, maybe the truth is overrated.
Yeah. This is the scene where I felt like Elliot and Dell are so alone in their involvement in all of this. Mm-hmm. It would have to be really hard to just be a bystander in all of this time travel, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't. Terrible. Now we're back in the 1800s and all the people are outside of the Landry farm. And I wrote, Kat tries to get all witchy here.
I wrote, this is my least favorite iteration of Kat cosplaying as a witch.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I didn't like any of this. These scenes get a little hokey for me.
Yes, I don't like it.
I don't really like it. Cyrus wants to extinguish the evil before it spreads. Kat says, I command you to stop storming the Landry house. Like, it's just really kind of stupid. But like, people are like throwing fire into the house, and Kat's like, stop, there's people in there. And so in the house right now, it's Elijah and Susanna. Is that correct? Maybe Jacob too?
Jacob, I think, has like gone in through the back to get Susanna and Elijah.
Got it. So Cyrus is like, what? Susanna's in there? Ah! He doesn't realize like she's in there and runs in, and Jacob's in there, and Jacob kind of starts to beat the shit out of him, I would say.
He's like so over Cyrus. He was like, you continue to ruin my life, and now's my time.
Yeah. There's a lot happening in this scene. Like, Thomas has a gun, and he's like pointing it at Cyrus at one point, and then Jacob's like trying to help Elijah and Susanna get out of the house as it's like burning. But Elijah's like, we forgot the almanac. And I'm like, what? What in the world? This is the almanac. This isn't the like, that's not that book that they write everybody's death in, is it?
I think so. I don't know. But they need it. I mean, it's in the future.
I know. So Jacob goes back into the house, and the house is burning. And all I can think of is that Ouija board scene where they were talking about the fire.
Oh.
And I'm like, nobody dies in this fire. I mean, we get through the scene. Nobody dies in this fire. So could it have been Cyrus who was the one coming through on the Ouija board?
Maybe.
I can't remember all the details of like what was spelled out on the Ouija board, but
too fast. I don't remember.
Yeah. The roof falls in. Kat runs in to try to, I don't know, save somebody. Cyrus is under a roof beam, and he's like begging for help, and Kat's like standing over him like, I know you don't die here, but I'm not going to be the one to save you. I'm like, wow, rough. In this moment, you don't see fully what's happening, but somebody's dragging Jake out of the house, and then they go outside, and they're all very happy that Jacob was rescued, and Kat looks up. And who has dragged Jacob out of the house? None other than young Colton. And he says, this is all my fault, and runs off. And I'm like, his fault? Why? Because he told them to plant rye and potatoes?
I don't know. But in Del's present day kitchen, we see adult ghost Colton. And she asks, why didn't you just tell me? She says, I have faith in my girls. They will find the answers I need. They will get our family through this. Ghost Colton never speaks. And as Del walks away, he is gone.
He disappears.
Alice goes to Wally's fish truck to find Noah, but instead she finds Max because Noah left town to clear his head. And Max offers Alice some fries and mustard. There is no snark here. He's just nice.
Enemies to lovers, like you said.
And back to 1816.
Go ahead, you finish it off.
Elijah ultimately saves Cyrus from the fire, and Kat looks at Jacob and she was like, did we just see Dad? And why does he think it's all his fault? So they obviously don't know the answer to that either. And we see Colton running through the woods back to the pond. He jumps in the pond and he emerges at a time we have seen before, the time when Alice found him splashing around the day of Rick's funeral. And this is when I wonder, maybe he was trying to save Rick when he jumped into that pond that time, but then he ended up back at the Landry farm and perhaps remembered something that Fern had told him or something he had read in the almanac about potatoes and rye, and he imparts that wisdom to them. And maybe that's why he thinks it's his fault, because since he put them in the position to be successful, that made them the target of the townspeople. That's purely speculation. But we do know that he did successfully time travel that morning that we thought he was trying to go save Rick, just not to where we thought he was trying to go. The question remains, where was he trying to go? Was he trying to save Rick, or was he trying to go back and save the Landry farm? To me, it seems like he was trying to save Rick.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, I just don't see Colton the morning of his best friend's funeral being like, I gotta go back and save my family.
Yeah, it does make more sense that he would be trying to go save Rick. It's interesting. As we were talking about this scene, I was wondering if Alice had ever had a realization back in season 1 about causing fault for any of her time travels.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because I imagine that each person who time travels and something happens and they witness it, they would think it's their fault, that something they said or them being there or,
Right.
So I'm like, this cycle could happen like for generations.
Yes.
Of time travelers. I mean, this show could go on forever. Yeah. Anyway, it was a good episode. I was glad we have some resolution towards the end of it.
Let's do a real quick rundown of some questions that we had
Yes.
about this show. Who pushed Alice into the pond? What's the motive there? Let's go back to the baby in the basket. We haven't talked about that in a while. And who
Yeah.
left the baby there? We finally have resolution on Alice and Colton singing together on that demo, and we know how that came to be. Thank you, Jasper. We know a little bit more about how much Colton knows about the pond, since we know he time traveled as a 17-year-old and he met young Jacob and Elijah and Susanna. Colton spent a lot of time warning Jacob. Obviously, he knew about the pond. I'm just going to say it right here. Knowing now what Colton knows, I don't think he did enough to protect his family from the pond.
Mm-hmm.
What's the story behind Colton never making an actual record? Why does the demo not go anywhere? Who is writing the letters to Dell? Side note, we did get a message that said the letters are coming from Rita, as she herself said it's always who you least expect.
Ooh.
What is the lie that the letters are referring to? What is the significance of the clock found in Elliot's wall? Obviously, we have some speculation there, but no hard evidence. We do know how the My Catherine painting got to Lingermore. The question we asked early in the season is, will we see Susanna and Thomas again? The answer is yes. I would say the question now is, will we ever see Susanna and Thomas in the future?
I think so.
Let's talk about the rings. There's a lot going on with the rings. We need to know more about Fern and Colton's mom and what the reference to the one in 1965 is. We need to know when Casey is from and what the initials KC stand for. Was that Jasper? I would add to the list in 1816. And what's his deal?
What's his deal?
Who is Claire and when are we going to see him?
Her.
Thank you. And do we have any other questions?
No, I think that wraps it up.
All right. Thank you for listening to this episode of Girls Gone Hallmark, a Bramble Jam podcast. If you have questions, comments, theories, thoughts on this show, please email us, girlsgonehallmark@gmail.com. And you just might hear your thoughts read in our next listener mailbag episode next week. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right, friends, before we go, just a quick heads up. You're about to hear some ads. These little gems help us keep the show running and the Hallmark love flowing. So do with that info what you will. Grab a snack, hit the skip button, or maybe, just maybe, listen in and discover your new favorite product. Bye.